And welcome into another Thursday Night Live here on the OHIO podcast. Do us a big favor this evening. Go ahead and hit that like button. Share the show. We should have a ton more people tonight. I think we're the only one in Buckeye Nation who's even willing to try to scratch the surface on what I think might be the biggest story in college football right now. We have an expert joining us this evening, so make sure you're sharing this show. Good to see everybody in the chat tonight. Make sure you stay active and keep it civil in the chat tonight. By the way, you can take us wherever you go. Download us on Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeart Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you download your podcast. You can catch the OHIO podcast. Listen to us at the gym, in your car, on the train, wherever you take us. We want to go with you in your earbuds. And make sure you give us a 5-star review. That way we can find more great Ohio State fans like yourself. Joining us this evening below me, you all know her, you love her. She's the host of the Spectrum podcast. It's TG. Hello, TG.
What up, everybody? How's everybody been going?
Going good. Hey, TG, hit everybody with your Spectrum podcast, where to download you, find you, and why they should subscribe.
Hey, guys, the Spectrum podcast is pretty much all about me covering Ohio State, but not just Ohio State. I cover all of college football. I cover college basketball when I have the opportunity, the NFL, and the NBA the way I do, because I know a lot of people have been interested in hearing my opinions about that. So if you guys are interested, I'll put the link in the chat for you guys to go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and you guys will never, ever miss up on anything. Trust me, you guys are going to enjoy it. I will be breaking down all games. I will even be breaking down big news that comes out as well. And there actually has been some more NFL news. But this upcoming show, I will be having myself a special guest, and it's the same guy I told you about, Eric.
Good deal. Looking forward to it. Thank you. Joining us also, my right-hand man. He is the person who will take this over if I die tomorrow of a heart attack. It's Chris Wilds. What's going on, Wild man?
You better not. That's all I'm going to say is you better not. I'm hanging in. Had a rough day. A little belly stuff going on today, but I'm ready for this, man. I'm psyched.
Excellent. Of course, we're going to be talking about the lawsuit between the University of Duke and their quarterback, Darian Mensah. And if we're going to do that, I know I need to go out and get the best. He, number one, has a Duke podcast. Number two, he's a freaking lawyer. My friends, welcome into the podcast tonight. It's Ben from the Bull City Coordinators podcast. Welcome in, Ben. Tell everybody about yourself.
I'm so sorry you think I'm the best.
You're the best, bro.
I apologize for that. That is a clear disclaimer. I will not accept that title. But thank you guys for having me on to talk about this. As you mentioned, I'm an attorney. I'm licensed in Virginia. I do a lot of different types of work. Contract work is not what I do a lot of, but interpreting releases and statutes is a lot of what I do. So I feel comfortable to some extent talking about this agreement. Of course, it's in North Carolina, so I've got to qualify what I'm saying about it. But again, my name is Ben. I host the Bull City Coordinators podcast and the Classical Antiquity Side Quest podcast. I come on whenever people need me to talk about Duke football. I'm more than happy to talk about it with anybody at any time. And this is kind of an intersection of a lot of complicated areas that I've been saying for years. It's time to make these guys employees, these students. Maybe aren't having these situations, but we'll get into that. And I do have some experience with protective order work, which is essentially what this is at this stage. And we can talk about that when we get there. But thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Great to have you, Ben, because we need someone to try to make sense of all of this and how this is going to affect college football moving forward and Ohio State in general. So to give a quick overview of, and this is just layman's terms, a Buckeye fan trying to figure this thing out. Duke University and quarterback Darian Mensah are basically in a financial struggle in the courts. Mensah, who initially committed to return to Duke, decided to transfer, which violated terms of his contract with the university. The contract details included Mensah reportedly signing a multi-year contract with Duke, which is something we have been hearing a lot of. Hey, we need to sign these kids to multi-year contracts. Well, apparently Duke did, and now we're seeing is it binding or not? I guess that's the best way to put it, because this included a $4 million NIL compensation annually, if I understand it correctly, and Duke's rights to his NIL in exchange for education and athletic opportunities. The court ruling, as of recently, said a judge denied Duke's request for an immediate restraining order preventing Mensah from entering the portal, but granted an order blocking him from enrolling at another school until a formal injunction hearing. A hearing for the injunction has been set for February 2nd in North Carolina, where the court will decide if Mensah can transfer and play elsewhere or if his contract with Duke remains binding. Did I explain that correct, Ben?
Essentially, and we're using the term contract, which is what this is. It's technically a licensing agreement. So think about stadium name deals, right? Where it's, M&T Bank Stadium, or, the Panthers used to be Ericsson Field or Ericsson Stadium, right? It's an agreement whereby company X leases the right to, or the Panthers lease, or whoever leases the naming rights to the stadium to a company in return for money. That's essentially what you have here. Is Mensah is coming here. He is being paid money so that Duke can use and license his name, image, and likeness for this 2-year period. Okay. One of the things that you talked about, coming to school and all that stuff, there is a clause in there that separates this from any scholarship and financial aid requirements. So we need to be careful about that, because this agreement is not tied to performance on the field, one, but also it is not something that is tied into the complicated issues with higher education law, FERPA. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not an expert in that. But you're essentially correct. All right. So it's a 2-year deal, 2-year licensing agreement. And essentially what happened was this. This is a pretty well-drafted complaint by Duke's lawyers. And if you look at it, you'll see that Nina King signed it. I would not read anything into that. Like, don't think, oh, she's pissed off, this is why she signed it. That's not what's at play here. This is what's called a verified complaint, in which injunctive relief is being asked for. When you are asking for injunctive relief, you have to file a verified complaint in most jurisdictions. You have to do it in Virginia. We've done it before at our firm, and apparently that's what you have to do here. She signed it, I would assume, because she's the one who signed all these other licensing agreements and is the athletic director. She just happens to be the natural person to sign it, okay? When we're talking about injunctive relief, there are a couple of things that are being asked for. Court systems in America have generally two types of powers to grant relief. One is legal claims, so claims for money damages. The other is non-monetary damages, or equitable relief. An injunction as a non-monetary damage, or non-monetary remedy, is a form of equitable relief. Okay. That's what they're coming to ask for right now. And primarily what Duke is asking for is to compel arbitration under the licensing agreement. Okay. There is an arbitration clause in the licensing agreement, and Duke has said, hey, please order this to go to arbitration. We need a temporary restraining order against Mensah, which sounds really, really bad, but it's not really that big of a deal, to stop him from leaving the program. And this is what's important: continuing to breach the confidentiality clause of this licensing agreement, because there is a confidentiality clause in there. That is very artfully laid out in the complaint for injunctive relief. Okay. That's important, because what Duke is saying is, we do not want this information getting out there. We don't want our trade secrets getting out there. We don't want to, just for example, you don't want to get your secret sauce handed out to your competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what is the most important part about this. Okay. So essentially, that is what Duke has asked for, is to make sure, A, this goes to arbitration, and B, that he doesn't leave the school while there's a request to have it arbitrated and the matter is being arbitrated. Now, once that happens, everything after that's going to be secret. Arbitration will gobble it all up. It's going to be secret. And I think that's what will happen. And let me indulge you for just a few more minutes.
Sure.
All right. In litigation, it is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We are at the very beginning stage. There's been a request for a temporary restraining order. There was some muddled reporting. I don't want to say the Heitner guy was inaccurate about it. He wasn't wrong with what he set out, but it didn't, what he set out and what he put in the Twitter narrative. But essentially, it sounded like Duke lost completely its request for a restraining order. And that's not what happened. Duke got actually very broad relief initially at the temporary stage, and we can get into that in a minute. But a temporary restraining order is somebody who has gotten protective orders and defended against protective orders before. They're very easy to get. The preliminary one is very easy to get. They are much harder to extend and make permanent, okay? So that's what this hearing on February 2nd is going to be about, is do we make this relief permanent? I think obviously it's going to go to arbitration. I don't think there's any dispute about that. The other matter of can Mensah go to another school, that's going to be more complex. But what Duke did get, and this is an absolute victory for Duke. You cannot spin this any other way, okay? I'm pulling up the order right now. This is paragraph 2 of the ordered relief. For the duration of this order, defendant Mensah and his agents, employees, attorneys, and all persons acting in concert or participation with him, with his knowledge, or under his actual or apparent authority, are enjoined from enrolling at another collegiate institution, playing football at another collegiate institution, licensing his NIL to another collegiate institution, taking any other action that would interfere with, diminish, or impair Duke University's exclusive rights under the contract, and otherwise committing any further breaches of the terms and conditions of this contract. He can enter the portal, but he can't do the other stuff, which is primarily breaching the confidentiality clause, which I think we know pretty clearly happened, because if you look at the complaint, and let me go back to the beginning of it here, there's a very good timeline that Duke's lawyers put out there, okay? You look at paragraph 30 at 2:07 p.m. Eastern on Friday, January 16, 2026, sports media begins to report, hey, Mensah's going to leave Duke. Here are the terms about a potential buyout. And they have a screenshot on Twitter. Then, almost 2 hours later, Mensah's telling Manny Diaz, hey, I'm entering the portal. So Duke has established a breach is occurring. They've shut that down now. That can't go on, okay? That's a big, big win for Duke. Huge win for Duke. But we'll see what else happens when it goes to the hearing on February 2nd.
So, in layman terms, they had a 2-year contract. This is about his NIL, name, image, likeness. He can go play wherever he wants, but he can't take money for his name, image, likeness, because that belongs to Duke for 2 years.
If this agreement's enforceable, correct. Well, it'll apply until I believe the end date of the licensing agreement, which is December 31, 2026. That's correct.
Okay, Chris, you're next, man. Go for it.
All right, so we've talked about Mensah, but is there anything here that is legally actionable against Miami as well for their participation? Because obviously, given the timeline, it is you can conclude that there was tampering which occurred. So is there any actionable legal action can be taken against Miami as well as against Mensah?
That's a really good question. I'm going to defer this a little bit here, and I'm going to refer you all to David McKenzie, who is a lawyer in North Carolina. If you've listened to the Ovius and Giglio podcast, you've heard him on. He is fantastic, okay? He deals with this kind of stuff all the time. Apparently, and I've talked to another North Carolina attorney friend of mine, he has told me this could be a real issue, okay, coming up for Miami and potentially Mensah as well, although we'll have to see. But essentially, there is a provision under North Carolina law, I'm trying to pull up the name of it, that Duke could use against Miami that potentially could allow Duke to get a whole lot of money from Miami over this. Okay. What, oh yeah, here it is. It's the North Carolina Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act, which has an escalating damages provision. Apparently, it can triple the damages. Now, how you prove that? Little difficult here. I think Duke would probably put some evidence about what they weren't able to do, what they get, and the money apparently, and this is kind of all going to come out at some point, but money that went to Mensah that could have otherwise been used on defensive players last year, maybe keep Queso Brown. And of course, now you're going to lose Cooper Barkate too, which is a huge loss. I think he's gone. So the way that the case against Miami will come out, because Duke sidestepped all that in the complaint filed against Mensah, which was smart, there's going to be some discovery in that arbitration proceeding. Because they've said, hey, Mensah's breaching his contract. We need documents, emails, what have you, from Mensah, text messages, phone access to some extent, whatever, of his phone, his emails, texts, to show who he was communicating with. These details got out. And apparently got to Miami if this reporting is accurate, right?
Right.
So there could be a case against Miami under North Carolina state law, the specifics of which I'm going to punt, okay, because I'm not licensed there and I don't do that type of work. But if Mackenzie's right and if my other colleague is correct in what he said, yeah, there could be a serious action against Miami here.
Now, you mentioned, and obviously this is something being fought in the state courts right now. Is this something that you could see going to federal court at some point?
Not as things currently stand as far as Duke versus Mensah, because Mensah is a resident of North Carolina, according to this licensing agreement and the pleadings. So you would not have what's called diversity jurisdiction, where the parties are residents, citizens of a different state, to bring them in there. And does not appear to be any federal law. If there's also federal question jurisdiction. So if some of the claims arise under federal law and give rise to a federal question, the federal courts in North Carolina could exercise jurisdiction over this. If this gets appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, it would have to go there from the North Carolina State Supreme Court, then to the United States Supreme Court. That would be the only way. But Duke versus Miami would have to end up in federal court unless there's some agreement that the schools have as part of being in the ACC, where they have a choice of forum provision. So, no, this would not end up in federal court as of yet. It would be a long slog to get there unless you get other players involved who are not currently involved.
Gotcha.
TG?
I would ask, do you think that this lawsuit might end up turning players, college football players, into classifying them as employees?
So that is one of my long-standing gripes about this whole thing. That's what should happen, right? And I think there's a number of reasons that the students are not employees, that these players are not employees. One, the workers' compensation payouts for some of these guys would be huge for career-ending injuries. All right, and then you're dealing with week-to-week kind of compensation you could get, and going to a panel of doctors. There's a lot there that I'm sure administrators want to avoid. There's also union issues, particularly with the Southern schools, that definitely want to be avoided. These Southern schools do not want players unionizing and forming public sector unions. This agreement is not the kind of employment contract you would see. There's no indicia of control. There's no control over the means, manner, and method of any work he's supposed to do. It's just an exchange of name, image, and license rights. Okay, so those issues aren't at play here. But your point in your question is a good one, because what's really underlying all of this is a workaround, an employment framework that the NCAA will not let people do, right? And the thing that I don't understand here is why you just can't make these guys employees, because with the amount of money that you're paying these people, And we can get into a whole lot of discussions about when you start treating these students, these young men, as professionals, right? You're getting paid $4 million a year. If you do it in the NFL, it's for a period of time. Either it's a 1-year agreement or a 2-year, multi-year deal, what have you, okay? There is no reason that these schools paying this much money to these young men should not be able to treat them like employees. And there's no reason that the young men should not get the rights that the employees would get, right? There's no reason not to have those rights. None at all. But if you employ them, then you can have these things called non-competes, okay? You can put in, you cannot go to a conference member school or a common opponent school, right? You need this stuff if you're trying to build a program and have some stability around it. I mean, as a fan, it's impossible to keep up with this stuff. If you're at a school like Duke that historically has not done well, right? You need to be able to have something that's going to keep your guys there, and let's get these. You can have non-competes, and it's not unfair. I was talking to people about this when this happened. I said, look, you can't. And I used to work fast food. I used to work in restaurants, right? I've worked in a movie theater before. When I was working those jobs,
Ben, something happened to the audio here. We're getting a pretty bad feedback. Give him a second here to. Actually, it's TG. It's not you, Ben.
Ben, we lost your audio.
You need to unmute yourself, Ben. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah.
Can y'all hear anything?
TG, it's you. There's like a real bad buzz on your end.
I think that might be coming from my refrigerator now that I think about it, because I am in the kitchen and that thing be doing go so loud.
Maybe turn your volume down a little bit. Ben, can you go ahead? Continue on. Oh, still can't hear you. You'll need to unmute yourself on EVMUC. Sorry about this, guys.
I've never had this problem, and then now it just starts.
There, now it's gone. It's
There
gone.
we go.
All right.
All right, good.
All right. So Ben, I muted you to figure that out. You'll have to unmute yourself on EVMUX. While he's working on that, the other way to do it is to jump out and jump back in, and it'll probably work for you into that. Great question earlier. I'm going to highlight that. WBuck21.
Yeah.
Where is the NCAA's involvement in this situation? Do they have any authority? We'll ask that when Ben returns. My guess is probably not.
But it leads to a great follow-up question I've got.
Yeah. All right, Ben, give us something here. See if we can hear you.
can you hear me?
We got you.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Good. Sorry
Perfect.
about
Let me ask this question, Ben. We'll just start right here. This is a great question from someone who's watching live. WBuck21. Where is the NCAA's involvement on this situation? Do they even have any authority?
The word absentee landlord comes to mind. I mean, they probably do, but they've done nothing for so long. And look, I want players to be able to move. I want them to get paid. Okay. But if you sign an agreement like this and you're getting paid what you're getting paid, it is not unreasonable for the school to come in and say, you got to abide by this. Right. But yeah, the NCAA could do stuff, but they're just that institution is just a joke. It's not willing to do anything.
I mean, that ain't shocking in any facet.
No,
at all. The second question I do have, though, is how do you think that this, how do you think this could affect scholarships, NIL agreements, and collective bargaining?
I think what the agents will learn is what LeBron James has taught us for years, which is always maximize your value, always sign a short-term contract. I think what you will see happen is there will not be 2-year agreements. There will not be 3-year agreements. There will be 1-year agreements. There'll be year-to-year propositions. I think that's what we will see happen. would also add, though, that there's probably going to need to be some agreement that sets some deadline by which the portal notification has to be made that will be shorter than what the NCAA agreement is. And the reason that I say that is I don't have a problem with Mensa leaving to get more money. I don't have a problem with Mensa leaving to get a bag. I have a problem with Mensa leaving this late after doing this commitment video and causing other people like Cooper Barkate to commit and stay, and us potentially to lose Queso Brown. And I understand, if what I've been told is true, that this deal came to Mensa late. So it's not like he was expecting this. But if I'm a school and I'm paying this kind of money on a licensing agreement, look, you got to make a decision before such and such a date, or you agree to stay. But I think they're just going to be 1-year deals from now on.
Yeah. There's another question in here from the chat. This is from JK Runner 247. Players can't unionize because there are no long-term employees, only stay for 5 years at most, right? So they can't unionize because you're only there from 3 to 5 years as a student.
I don't, not being an employment lawyer, I will note, I could be wrong. I don't think the duration of time that you're there is the issue. I think you can join a union and form a union and be with it for however long you want. The issue is they are not employees. That is the problem that they're running into. So I think that there is going to have to be some situation at some point where people come together and try to figure this out. But what I think the NCAA wants to do is just let this whole thing burn and then make Congress fix it. Fix, air quotes.
So Buck Vader, one of our producers, he sent me a list of questions. One of them that caught my attention that I'd like to ask you now is about Title IX. How does Title IX play into this, if at all? And the other, his follow up with that would be, how about conferences? What obviously the conferences are paying very close attention to what's going on here. Is there any kind of conference dealings that might happen here because of this?
The first one, this isn't really a Title IX issue. That would be more like you don't have enough. You have like 70 boys sports and 30 girls sports. That would be more, to make it simple. Okay. That would be, that's a good comment there. I like that.
Yeah.
But
RTCB, you piece of trash.
I like that. But what do the conferences do? I don't have any idea. I mean, because you can't do something that's going to handicap the ability of your members to be competitive, which you could interpret in two ways, but there's not really a good solution here. What's funny about this is if we can all give a big thank you to Florida State for filing a lawsuit, giving Miami all this extra cash after Duke got Miami in the college football playoff by beating Virginia, that money would have been distributed amongst the school member of the conference members. Now it all went to Miami because Florida State demanded it so it could stink and lay an egg for the last couple of seasons.
Interesting. Okay, Chris, go for it, man. Jump in.
So I want to go back to the NCAA and maybe talk about the ACC a little bit and some actions they might take. And I know this is something usually reserved for appellate courts, but would there be any benefit to the NCAA and the ACC as far as long-term action to file an amicus brief in this matter if it goes to court? And is there going to be any benefit to that long-term as far as give any kind of framing or maybe enforcement for these deals down the road?
So if I recall correctly, Charlie Baker is the president of the NCAA. I have no idea what he does or what he is doing, other than occasionally he shows up and he cries and he whines and he clutches his pearls and you talk just about a useless human being. I mean, he's doing nothing. Whatever he's getting paid, he's just stealing from people. I can't remember when I had this discussion, but it was with somebody on my podcast. This was probably 2 years ago now. I said, here is the biggest problem that we have with all this going into the courts. And the courts essentially are making the rules now. Okay. Like, who's that guy in Alabama that's like 38 and is playing for the basketball team? Like, what? I mean, what?
Mhm.
This is absurd. But courts are really good at deciding the narrow issues that are before them. Courts are really bad at long-term policy implementation and decisions, right? So the problem that, and I think the NCAA is like doing this deliberately to steal from Ovius and Giglio. They're doing the whole Joker, we're just going to watch it all burn kind of a thing. I think the NCAA is letting this get so chaotic that eventually Congress or somebody will step in. But I don't think the NCAA is going to get involved, because I think the NCAA wants the chaos, so then Congress will come up with an enforcement mechanism, which will probably conveniently be these schools keeping all the money that is made off of the literal backs and broken bones and busted joints of these players. That, I think that's what the NCAA is shooting for, and that's why Charlie Baker is just out there wringing his hands. Well, I wish we could do something about this one day. It's just so awful. I mean, you could do something. You could do something, but you're not.
TG.
But that's exactly what I was thinking about them, because I don't think they care. If anything, a lot of people would say, could this lawsuit like weaken their enforcement or eligibility model? And does this directly challenge their authority and or governance? This lawsuit, at least this case.
I don't know. I think what's going to happen is all this is going to get worked out in arbitration between the parties. I do think Mensah ends up, if the reporting is right, he's going to go to Miami, right? I think that's what will happen. The question is how much Duke will get from it. And Mensah is going to have to pay some money to Duke under this agreement. And I want to point this out because this is going to be kind of complicated here. This is in Exhibit A of the Mensah contract. It's the Appendix A to the licensing agreement. If you look at Section 6, if I remember my Roman numerals, okay, there's a section that says, in no event will either party's total liability to the other party for any claims arising out of or in connection with this license, including for breach of contract, exceed the total value of all consideration provided by Duke student athlete under this license. So reading that provision, best case scenario for Duke is, if these numbers are right, $4 million back, right? However, the next section, though, does say the foregoing limitations shall not apply to claims, damages, or losses relating to A, a party's indemnification obligations under this license, or B, a party's failure to comply with its confidentiality obligations under this license. So that's where Duke might be able to get more money, because it disclaimed a whole bunch of damages, okay, for just normal run-of-the-mill breach, but not for breaching the confidentiality, if I'm reading that right. And I've tried to get in touch with David McKenzie to ask him about that and see if I'm right or wrong about that. I think what this could set up, because there was the one quarterback who was at Washington or Washington State or whoever.
Washington.
Yeah, who was going to leave.
Damon, yeah.
Yeah, and then there was some litigation that was started, and it's like, no, you're staying. I think what this precedent could set, because this is all equity, and equitable cases are supposed to be decided alike. Like cases should be decided alike. If this agreement is upheld, okay, this is, and I assume it's a model contract that everybody uses, there's going to be some tighter enforcement mechanisms, and there's going to probably be some tighter penalties here. There's going to be some stuff hammered out on the edges about transfer and what your losses are when you move. But I think the hope here is, from the NCAA perspective and the school perspective, is that this thing gets enforced. Because, people talk about Mensah going to get a bag. Duke could be getting a bag right back.
Yeah.
And to then use next season to
Yep.
get some other guys.
So it's very similar, and there was a comment earlier, and I want to try to highlight it if I can find it real fast, but yeah, W Buck 21. So basically, if I understand this right, let's say he's allowed to go play for Miami, and Duke is owed $4 million. Miami's going to owe Duke that $4 million. That
Mensah will owe the $4 million.
Yeah, but
Right.
Miami's going to pay him, and then he's going to pay Duke with it, essentially.
Right. But the other issue, though, with that is if I understand this agreement correctly, and I was out of town Tuesday morning until Thursday afternoon, this afternoon, and so I haven't had a chance to read it in the detail I would normally do for one of these things. If I understand this correctly, Duke owns his NIL rights till the agreement's up. So any money that would go from Miami to him potentially could come to Duke. So, I mean, that's you talk about getting the bag back.
Cha-ching!
Right? I mean, that could be. Now, the question, though, is how the court interprets the limitation of liability clause with all this, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, here is the Section 3. Or let me. I'll see if I can find this and read this here. But Duke has these rights, these NIL rights. It says, for the term. This is Section 1. For the term, student athlete hereby grants to Duke and its affiliates and each of its and their respective successors an irrevocable, non-exclusive, except for some limitations, worldwide, sub-licensable, freely transferable, and royalty-free right and license to use student athlete's name, nickname, likeness. Okay? Persona, performance, right of publicity, biographical information, jersey number, statistics, data, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So as long as that agreement is in place, and as long as it's upheld, those rights are his. Miami can't use them for promotional purposes. Right. David McKenzie was talking about that today on Twitter. Again, go follow him at McKenzie Law. He said, well, okay, is Miami is interested in him if they can't put him up on billboards and put him on TV and promote him and all that stuff? I mean, obviously, yes, because they want to win a championship, but, you know, be the first time they've done it in the ACC.
Interesting. Let's talk big picture in the last 20 minutes of this podcast. Let's start with college football in general, and then we'll narrow it down to Duke and Ohio State. So college football in general, I got to imagine, Ben, that all conferences, universities, everybody is their attention, especially in their legal departments, are focused on this. This could set a precedent. You mentioned Damon Williams in Washington earlier. I found it almost hilarious that his quote-unquote agents, after he basically found out he couldn't leave Washington, bailed on him. Like, see you later. Like, we're no longer going to be working with you, the agency firm that he was with. I don't know if that's something could be similarly done here, but it feels like NIL and the transfer portal is being ran by agents currently, and this could set a precedent. Long-term or big picture, college football, how does this change college football January 2027 when we hit the portal again?
Well, not to do anything that some other people may have already done. I know Connor O'Neill had quoted The Wire talking about this. He's the On3 guy for Duke, and he's fantastic. Big fan of Connor. But when I was reading the complaint and looking at some of the damages for breach, all I could think about was Stringer Bell saying, "Is you taking notes on an effing criminal conspiracy?" I bring that up because all this stuff got out, right? All this stuff got out. It got to Thamel. It got to Peter Nakos, or however you pronounce his name. I'm bad with names. I come by it, honestly. But and my dad's even worse than I am. I think you're going to have to see these agents be a lot more careful. You might not see these bombs getting dropped about agreements of, oh, here are the terms, here are the terms. You have to keep this stuff a lot more secret. You're going to have to button this stuff up, right? I tell my son all the time, I said, look, if you're going to do something that's against the rules in the house, keep in mind the difference between committing a crime and being a criminal is the criminal got caught. Commit the crime, don't be the criminal, son. So you're going to have to be
If
real,
so, better call Ben instead of better
right?
call Saul.
Exactly. You're going to have to be savvy about this. But I think that the big picture stuff on how this is going to play out, all these, again, you're only going to see 1-year deals, right? And I do think there needs to be a push for accreditation of agents, right? And I think you're going to see some attempt to put some sort of kind of non-compete in here, but that gets you into the employee town, which is a problem. Some sort of restriction on portal mobility. I don't know. There are going to be some changes in how these agreements are negotiated, and the journalists who get the access to this to drop these bombs, the Woj bombs, as we've all heard about over the years. That stuff's going to have to be reeled in. I mean, look, loose lips sink ships. This stuff is going to have to be buttoned down tight. They're not going to be text messages. You're going to go back to Better Call Saul. All those burner phones are going to be coming out, right? They're going to be cracking them in half and chucking them, right? I mean, you're going to have to lock this stuff down. I mean, you're going to have to keep it really secret and go through intermediaries here. So I think that that's going to be the big thing. And I don't think we're going to see much in the way of multi-year contracts unless the schools are really willing to pony up a lot more cash. And, I mean, it's not like Mensah wasn't getting paid. I'm pretty sure you can feed a family on $4 million. But I can't fuss at the guy for wanting to get more if he thinks it's worth it, if it just happens to come available. I don't think, though, because I do think this contract will be upheld. This licensing agreement will be upheld. It was an arm's length negotiation. His agent has been putting stuff out on the Twitter machine, and boy, he needs to stop doing that. He doesn't need to be talking about it. He needs to keep his mouth shut. There's agreements about how this was a collaborative process. They can't say it's a contract of adhesion where it's really unfair and one side took advantage of the other. That's not there. But I mean, I think you're going to have to see a lot shorter duration of contracts, and you're going to have to see a lot more silence about how these terms get out, right? Because there's going to be, I guarantee you, some of these agreements are going to get a lot stricter if they find there's breaches of the agreements. The confidentiality clause is getting breached. I mean, this thing allows him to talk to his family members, talk to his tax advisors, his lawyers, all that, which is what it should say. But there's going to be some real severe penalties for these confidentiality breaches. And I think that this next round of negotiations will be something very interesting to watch if there's any more lawsuits and what these agreements say.
Chris.
And it kind of sounds like you're in favor of kind of more of the universities keeping it quiet, the players keeping it quiet. But at the same time, as the NIL is concerned, doesn't that kind of fly in the face of the house versus the NIL, and having that anytime you make over $600, it has to be reported to the clearinghouse and it becomes kind of public knowledge? Doesn't that kind of go against what you're kind of saying there a little bit?
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's no real rules, right? I mean, they say there's rules, but there's not rules. I mean, nobody's really following these, I don't think. I just, I'm going to boil it down to its essence, man. It's going to be pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And that's what we're going to see happen with this. I think some of these, look, you can go back and Google me to borrow from Signetti. You'll find me saying stuff where I'm like, hey, these players need to move. They need to be able to transfer. But look, I'm sorry, you're paying these guys what you're paying them. I mean, I'm all for the universities upholding, the universities and college upholding their agreements. Maybe I'm selfish to some degree about it, but it's hard for me to feel a lot of sympathy for players who are getting paid a lot of money being told, I'm sorry, you got to stick with this for another year. You signed this agreement. If you didn't want to do it, don't sign the agreement.
Yep, I agree.
Josh, I'm surprised that agents would allow him to sign his life away like that. I know the money is nice, but you have to know the NIL market is just going up every year. Why would you sign a multi-year deal? I, tell me if I'm wrong, Ben, but agents are like, look, they're going to get a percentage of this deal. So if they're getting a 2 year, $4 million a year, $8 million deal, and they're getting a percentage of it, sign it here, sign on the dotted line. I mean, agents about money too, man.
Well, yeah, I think that's part of it, but I also think too. Remember, Mensah was coming up from Tulane, so there was a question of how was he going to fit at the next higher level. Now, Tulane fans, you have every right to talk smack to me, and I totally understand that. Y'all beat us this year. You whooped us. I'm not saying you're not a good program. I want to be very clear about that. But there were some questions about how is he going to transfer from the American to the Atlantic. There were some legitimate questions about that. So signing a multi-year deal for him, because this agreement is not tied to his performance, actually did make sense, right? It's not like, let's take a Russell Wilson situation to go way back in time here where he'd been good at NC State for a long time and was just going to another P5 school, right? That makes a little bit more sense. And I know the eligibility analysis doesn't work, but it made sense, I think, for Mensah to try to get that 2 year deal, not tied to his performance, because there were some questions about how well he would adjust. So I think that did make sense. But I think that, again, to his point, 1 year deals from now on, that's what you're going to get. But he may have made less if he had just done a 1 year deal, right? It could have been 2 million or 1 million or something like that.
Ben, not to interrupt, but just kind of piggybacking off that and talking about the agents. Do you think the biggest problem with all this is that you've got dad agents and uncle agents and mom agents in there, as opposed to real licensed sports agents?
That's always a good point. You always wonder about what kind of advice people are getting. If it's a mom and dad and uncle and brother and cousin who are giving you the good advice, then I think that's fine. Regardless of who it is, you have to make sure it's good advice. But I also think you want to make sure you have agents who really know the market and understand what's at play here. What I don't know, if I can just spin off a little bit here, I wonder if these guys just didn't expect Duke to file suit and thought Duke was going to roll over on this. And if he decided he was going to leave in the portal earlier, Duke does probably do this different because Duke has time to adapt and go get somebody. The pickings are slim now, right? I mean, who's in the portal? I'm not knocking Eget, but that's his eligibility is a question mark, right?
Right.
His advantage is he's been around for a while, but I mean, so I think it does come down to if you're going to hire an agent or if you're going to have a support group, make sure that support group is giving you good advice.
Mm-hmm. TG.
I would say what would be the best kind of question to ask here. I think, okay, like how might conferences such as the ACC, the Big Ten, and the SEC and the Big 12 will be affected by if Duke prevails and loses? How do you think these conferences will be affected?
I think everybody is rooting here, probably except Mario Cristobal. He might have actually taken a knee for the first time ever when he saw this lawsuit get filed. It may have shocked him so much he kneeled down. But I think most of these schools are saying, God, I hope these agreements are enforceable. Otherwise, what are we doing? I mean, I bet you the Big 12, I bet you the Big 10, I bet you the SEC is like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Definitely don't file those things. That's a terrible idea. I can't believe you would do that. But they've got the thumbs up and they're encouraging and they're rooting them on. I think that, I mean, how much money are we talking about? I mean, it's a lot of cash. A lot. And you're going to, I live in Roanoke, close to Blacksburg. When all the money that they've gotten together for Franklin and his staff and his people to come in, that John Rokovich got together, that's a lot. That's a big commitment. It's a big commitment, and that they are hoping that there's some enforceability here.
Yeah. Did you speak about good question, W Buck? I just want to make sure we covered this clearly. Did you speak about illegally tampering and if Duke could sue Miami since the coaches are employees? Think Ole Miss and LSU are heading down this path. Yeah, they are. Obviously, yeah, because the whole tampering thing, kind of an NCAA word for you shouldn't be contacting players before they enter the portal. Everybody knows though you can just contact the player's agent and it's quote unquote not tampering. But speak to that a little bit. What Duke's saying on those lines of hey Miami, that's our guy here.
I think that that's a good point about the tampering, but excuse me, I don't think tampering in and of itself, because it's an NCAA rule, good luck. You're going to have some violation of state law, either a state statute or a common law doctrine in the state that would come into play, and that could come into play here. But I think the specifics of Ole Miss and LSU and what happens there, a little bit different because those coaches are employees, and so they have buyout agreements that are there that are not necessarily here because these are not employment contracts with the players; they're licensing agreements, right? So what you're going to see that's different with the coaches, because those are employment agreements and you have easy buyouts that I'm sure are included in all those. What's going to be different here is you're probably going to get into some sub-license issue, right, where Duke sub-licenses the NIL rights of Mensah to Miami in return for, wait for it, money. And so money will come back from Miami to Duke as part of this. I think we're going to see that get worked out in arbitration. But the big thing is whether I'm right about that one clause in the contract. Could be right, could be wrong, but we'll see.
Yeah. Any final questions, Chris? TG, jump in.
So let's be realistic here. I know you've talked about arbitration versus the odds of this going to a full-on trial, but realistically, is what type of timetable do you think we're looking at? Because we know what it'd be like if it was the NCAA, but being as it is the North Carolina court system, what type of timetable are we realistically looking at this to be resolved in, and what are going to be some of the key milestones over this, do you think?
So that's a good question. So I think we will know as of and I want to make sure that I get the date right. So let me go to the TRO order. The hearing is set for, I can't remember what day. I think it's February 2. And we should know that day. I'm sure the judge is going to be ready to rule when he or she walks into the courtroom. I can't remember who the assigned judge is now, and I apologize for not remembering that. But it's February 2 this year at 2:30 p.m. Okay. So that's an evidentiary hearing. Duke and Mensah are going to be able to put on evidence. So what we would do when I used to do these protective orders, is somebody who wanted a protective order would have to put on. That was the last one I did, was one where I was trying to get one for my client against somebody. We had to put on evidence as to why we were entitled to one, why she was entitled to one. So we had to call witnesses. I mean, it's a full-blown trial. It's not a trial like with the jury. It's a bench trial before the judge. You're going to have evidence put on. Mensah will probably put on some evidence. Duke will probably call some witnesses. Okay. And I think the judge is going to rule that day because Mensah's already in the portal. His name's entered in the portal. They're going to say, look, we need to know so either Mensah can go to another school, Duke can have this contract dealt with. I think the judge is going to rule that day or probably no later than the next day. But I would suspect some order entered that day. Okay. Then the issue is going to be the arbitration will be done probably within a month or two, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that, depending on when they can schedule it. Mensah is going to want to get this scheduled fast. Duke has a little bit more interest in dragging this out. Part of the problem for Mensah now is, from what I understand, it's too late for him to enroll this semester in Miami, if what I've read is correct. I mean, I haven't gone and researched it because I don't really care enough to start getting a bunch of crap in my algorithm. But the longer Duke drags this out, the worse it is for Mensah, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I would ask, how do you think that this case could affect NIL collectives and boosters' involvement? And also, how do you think it could affect the impact of recruiting and roster management?
Here's the thing. I don't know how it's going to affect recruiting for Duke, because I think people will say, don't go to Duke. They'll sue you if you leave.
Oh, it's
Right.
about all college football, actually.
Right. But they're already hearing that kind of stuff now. So that's not really fundamentally different from what's already being said, if that makes sense. Right. But I think your larger point is about the boosters. I think some boosters are going to start getting ticked off if these agreements are not upheld. And they say, you're coming to me and you're asking me for money every year. I mean, this is a very good topic to address. You were asking me for more money, more money, more money. We put $8 million, if the numbers are right, in Mensah's pocket. We put that aside to pay for him. We didn't pay enough for the rest of the defense. We struggled defensively. We put all this money in the Mensah basket, and what are we getting from it? I think this is a valid time to start discussing what we are doing with this sport and how it's playing itself out. But is it going to lead to change, or is it just going to be more Charlie Baker hand wringing? I have no idea. But it's a very good question, and I think it's a great topic for everybody to be talking about. Because look, I will tell you, seeing this crap happen with Duke, I am very much less interested in driving down there and back more than once a year, if that. I mean, I may not even want to do that. I mean, Mensah's gone. Barcate's going to be gone. We lost Brown. He's going to be at Virginia Tech down the road. I mean, there are going to be some people who start saying, what is the point of all this? I think. I mean, what is the point of all this?
Yeah. And that was basically my next question. As I said, I was going to ask you to remove your lawyer hat and put on your fan hat and just give me, as a Duke fan, give me your initial reaction from this as a fan.
My reaction as a fan was kind of, not to necessarily repeat what I've already said, but I was kind of disappointed by this. Mensah had already looked at the draft and then said he was coming back. When Brown left, I was like, hey, he's going to get more money. I'm disappointed he's leaving, but he's going to get more money, and good for him. He's succeeding. Good for him. He's succeeding. He put his name in the portal. Duke had time to do something about it, right? I'm not going to get mad at a player who is wanting to better himself, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And what Mensah did was, I think, the wrong way to do it, because Mensah said, I'm coming back. I'm doing my LeBron James video, right? I'm coming back here. And the staff is building a team around him, keeping Cooper, keeping Nate, bringing in some guys, and trying to do everything they can for Mensah. And Mensah waits till the last day you can to enter his name in the portal. He announces it. There were negotiations going on. That's part of the thing. But you do it at a time where it's too late for Duke to take action in the portal and correct things. And so as a fan, it's really disappointing over the timing of it. That's what I'm upset about. That's what I'm upset about, is the timing of it and the way he did it. And then the dominoes. Barcate put his name in the portal that same day, from what I understand, and had to wait till Wednesday to announce that was the last day he could do it. There were some efforts to get him. I mean, those are two hard guys to replace at a school like Duke. Very, very hard to replace. And then Duke had put their money thinking this position was secure for 2 years, and now it's not. And now they're losing Barcate, who was a guy they were going to have for 2 years. As a fan, you just really disappointed and just wondering, why am I spinning my wheels on this? I mean, what's the point?
Ben, it's been awesome having you in, man. Where can everybody follow you at? I know over at the College Huddle, you're one of my guys. Appreciate that. But there's a lot of Ohio State fans here who be like, you know what? I need to follow this guy. He's got great insights from a legal perspective.
Yeah, check me out at Duke FB coverage on the socials, most of them. 2 websites, at Classical Antiquity Pod and at bullcitycoordinators.com. ClassicalAntiquityPod.com and bullcitycoordinators.com. I'm always happy to come on and discuss the legal issues of this whenever you guys need anybody. It's fun to talk about, and it's been interesting to read. Just remember, though, guys, it's a marathon, not a sprint. A temporary victory at the TRO hearing could turn into a defeat for Duke. But I think this thing's going to go to arbitration, and then it's going to be secret. But it's going to be pretty interesting to watch it unfold. And I'm always happy to come back on and talk about it with you guys as long as I'm available.
Perfect. We're going to be heading over to Patreon where TG, myself, and Chris, and all of you who are Patreon members, we're going to take this, what we just learned in the last hour. Now we're going to look at this from a perspective of Ohio State. I'm sure we're going to get heated in it. It's going to be a lot of fun. The asylum has no rules, so someone might get punched. So no lawyers allowed. Sorry, Ben. We don't want it.
Hey, no, thanks a lot for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Happy to come on whenever you need me.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. We will be back Sunday night. Will be our next live at 8 o'clock. Sunday night we'll go Sunday through Thursday at 8 o'clock. And then we're going to head on over to the Asylum right now over on Patreon. It's down in the description if you want to go join us. Only costs $5 a month. You can sign up for the whole year and get 1 month free. I was going to say thank you to Ben. He's already gone. He's out of here. Dude is busy. Very knowledgeable man. Give us 5 minutes. We'll see you over on Patreon, everybody. Have a good night.